Justine Hunt, and the title of my presentation is Early Modern English Poem versus Modern English Poem. For this presentation, I'll be comparing William Shakespeare's Sonnet 18 and E. Cummings' I Carry Your Heart With Me, I Carry It In. The key question and thesis of my final is through analyzing the language in these two poems, I can discover how word choices in the romantic genre of poetry has changed from early modern English to modern English. I will analyze specific words from each poem, and I will use the Oxford English Dictionary to see the origin and how the meanings and usage might have changed during these time periods. Before diving into the two poems, I thought it would be important to talk about the relevance of language and word order and choices in poetry. For this section, I'm referencing Michael Myers' textbook, Literature to Go. Myers gives some great insight on the importance of words in poetry in his book. One thing that Myers points out is the number of words in a poem. Because there are very few words in a poem compared to, let's say, a novel or a short story, the author needs to pay extra attention to the words that they use. Therefore, as a reader, you can assume that almost every word in a poem is important and is relevant for the actual theme. Myers writes, in the 18th century, poetic diction, the use of elevated language rather than ordinary language, was highly valued in English poetry. But since the 19th centuries, poets have generally overridden the distinctions that were once made between words used in everyday speech and those used in poetry. Myers also goes into the topic of denotations, which is the literal dictionary meaning of the words, and connotations, which is associations and implications that go beyond the word's literal meaning. When reading about these two ways to define words, it made me think of how I am analyzing these two poems. I'll be looking at the denotations of the words in these poems, but I will also keep in mind the connotations. The connotations of the words in Shakespeare's poems would probably be a lot different than they would be today. This might change the way that we read the certain poems throughout history. The first poem that I'm going to look at today is William Shakespeare's Sonnet 18, and I'll read it right now. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May, and summer's lease hath all short a date. Sometime too hot the eye of heaven shines, and often is his gold complexion dimmed. And every fair from fair sometimes declines, by chance or nature's changing course untrimmed. But thy eternal summer shall not fade, nor lose possession of that fair thou owest. Nor shall death brag thou wanderest in his shade, when in eternal lines to time thou growst. So long as men can breathe, or eyes can see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee. So what is this poem about? This sonnet compares a summer's day to the love that one has for their significant other. The speaker makes it known that a summer's day is not perfect. There will be rough winds, and other times the sun might shine too hot. In this first half, the speaker is stating that his or her lover is better than a summer's day, by saying that they are more lovely and more temperate. The speaker then brings up, which I believe to be the most important issue in this poem, that a summer's day will always come to an end. Yet the speaker writes, but thy eternal summer shall not fade. Unlike a summer's day that is too short and fleeting, their love will last in eternity. The buds will not die and the cold will not come in. The speaker ends his poem by saying, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee. This, once again, is a critical part of this poem. This last line drives home the idea that their love will last in eternity. Even after they are gone, this poem will always remain. And those that read this poem can experience the love that they had, giving life to their love once again. So to go along with Shakespeare's Sonnet 18, I'm going to talk a little bit about Valerie Traub's the sonnet, sequence, sexuality, and Shakespeare's two loves. I was not able to find a peer-reviewed source specifically on Shakespeare's Sonnet 18. However, I was amazed with the number of sources that I found linking Shakespeare's sonnets to his sexuality. Traub focuses on the difference between sexual actions and love in her book chapter. At one point she writes, "The poems demonstrate his ability to imagine a range of emotional effects, including carnal desire for other men, or whatever homoerotic desires a poem represents. They may or may not have anything to do with Shakespeare's own bodily practices." Traub seems to be arguing that the question does not need to be if Shakespeare was homosexual or heterosexual, but instead the focus should be on the emotional outlook that he seems to have towards sexuality in his poems. Although this book chapter was not directly about Sonnet 18, I do think it's important to get an insight of what types of conversations are being had right now revolving Shakespeare's sonnets. The second poem that I'm going to analyze is E.E. Cummings' "I Carry Your Heart With Me, I Carry It In." And once again, I'm going to read this poem out loud. "I carry your heart with me, I carry it in my heart. I am never without it. Anywhere I go, you go, my dear, and whatever is done by only me is your doing, my darling. I fear no fate, for beautiful you are, my world, my true. And it's you are whatever a moon has always meant, and whatever a sun will always sing is you. Here is the deepest secret nobody knows. Here is the root of the root, and the bud of the bud, and the sky of a tree called life, which grows higher than soul can hope or mind can hide. And this is a wonder that's keeping the stars apart. I carry your heart, I carry it in my heart." So what is this poem about? This poem depicts how love can be so deep, in which it is inseparable. The speaker tells his lover that he will always carry her heart with him. The speaker says that her love is his world, and that the moon was meant for her love, and that the sun will always sing for her as well, drawing in the idea that he believes that his lover is the entire world to him, and that the world moves for her. The speaker continues in this sense when describing the root, bud, and tree of life. The speaker describes these things and then says, "which grows higher than soul can hope and mind can hide, and this is a wonder that's keeping the stars apart." In this line, he is saying that she is more than hope itself, and that his love for her is stronger than any mind can imagine. Their love is as strong as the force that keeps the stars apart in the sky. This poem is a deep declaration for a love that is beyond measure. So to accompany Cummings' poem, I am going to talk a little bit about Roy Tarkowski's E.E. Cummings, parentheses, punctuation as a poetic device. This text discusses Cummings' use of punctuation in his poems. Tarkowski also mentions Cummings' lack of capitalization in his poems, and even mentions that he would not capitalize his own name. Tarkowski is specifically interested in Cummings' use of parentheses. He addresses the use of parentheses in "I carry your heart with me, I carry it in my heart." He writes, "The poem is in fact an ongoing series of statements that are alternately outside and then inside the parentheses. Each statement is immediately followed and accompanied by a parallel statement inside the parentheses, literalizing that the speaker is never without her. The parentheses act out of the metaphor of her existence inside his heart even more." This really just amazed me to see that while Cummings does use beautiful language in his poem, I really think he does even more with his punctuation choices, especially for the poem that I chose to analyze. So I'm choosing to kind of dive a little deeper into 5 words from each poem. The first 5 are descriptive words from Sonnet 18, and all of these words are used as adjectives in the poem. So lovely, temperate, untrimmed, eternal, and fair. So once again, lovely is an adjective. This comes from the word love, which is a noun, and love originated from the Germanic language. The current definition is lovable or attractive on an account of beauty. It was kind of interesting to see that there were many obsolete definitions for this adjective. Some were loving, kind, affectionate, deserving of love, or admiration. Which I like those definitions more than the current definition, which I felt like put more attention on the attractiveness of one. The next word is temperate. This word originated from the Latin language. The current definition is for persons, their conduct, practices, etc., keeping due measure, self-restrained, and moderate. This word was really interesting because there are multiple definitions depending on what is being described as temperate. However, they all have the same underlining meaning, which is kind of that moderate, kind of middle line type of idea. Untrimmed, which I, of course, looked up the spelling that we use today in the Oxford English Dictionary. So this is really tricky to find the origin. It comes from the word trimmed, and what I found was it's originated in the Old English language. So the current definition is not put in good order or condition, not carefully or neatly arranged or attire. Another definition that I thought was interesting was not properly balanced, which seems more negative than the current definition. The next word is eternal. This originated from the French language, but it also mentioned that it was relevant in Spanish, Italian, and late Latin. And the spellings were all pretty similar for those different origins. The current definition is infinite and past and future duration, without beginning or end, that always has existed and always will exist, which really shows, I thought that this showed that this is a great word choice on Shakespeare's part for what he wanted to get across for his Sonnet 18. And the last one for Shakespeare's sonnet is fair. This originated from the Germanic language. The current definition is beautiful to the eye or attractive appearance, good looking. The obsolete one obsolete definition is excellent, admirable, good, desirable, noble, honorable, and reputable. For this one, the current definition does date back to when Shakespeare's poem was written around that time, so I think he definitely could have been intending this to be the beautiful or attractive appearance, but this obsolete definition I think also could work for what Shakespeare was intending with his use of fair, especially the desirable, even the honorable. I'm thinking he probably feels like the person he's speaking to is probably in his mind honorable and excellent and all those. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And next I will be talking about the descriptive words from E.E. Cummings' poem, I Carry Your Heart With Me, I Carry It In. Once again, I'm going to do 5 words from this poem. Beautiful, deepest, darling, carry, and heart. I put a little asterisk next to carry and heart because they're not adjectives. Carry is a verb, heart's a noun. And although I wanted to focus on descriptive words, I just felt like they were too important in this poem to not address. So that's why they're going to be a little different. So the first word is beautiful. Beautiful comes from the word beauty, which is a borrowed word from the French language. Current definition is highly pleasing to the sight, embodying an ideal of physical perfection, which I didn't know that was the definition of beautiful. I thought it was interesting to think of perfection, because obviously no one's perfect, but people are described as beautiful all the time. I thought that beautiful seems to be like a more modern version of how fair is used in Sonnet 18, which I found interesting. Next word is deepest. So deepest comes from the word deep, which originated from the Germanic language. The current definition is having a great or considerable extension downward. In the poem sense, a great extension, I think, would be in regards to the secret of love. It's this great love, this deep love, that extends forever in the case of the poem. Next one is darling. This one again was kind of tricky. I believe it originates from the Old English language as well. The current definition is a person who is very dear to another, the object of a person's love, one dearly loved. Now we're on to the two that are not adjectives. So carry, which is a verb. This originated from French language. The current definition is to transport or move a person or thing from one place to another. Which is kind of interesting the way that it's used in the poem. He says that I'll carry your heart with me. And the definition I didn't quite think fit that perfectly, but he is, in a sense, taking her heart with him wherever he goes. So it works, but I thought it was kind of an interesting definition that I didn't expect from this word in the way it's used in the poem. The last word is heart, which is a noun. This also originated from Germanic. The current definition is a hollow muscular organ which performs the function of a pump in the circulatory system, receiving blood from the veins and contracting to propel it into arteries. Another definition is an extended use, that part of the in front of the body which is near to the heart, the vicinity of the heart, the chest, especially with reference to the action of placing or holding someone close to this location as an expression or gesture of addiction, esteem, or for comfort. I thought that the second definition kind of fit more for how it's used in the poem, especially when I imagine, when he says, I will carry your heart with me, I imagine it in his heart. So, and you do see this when people get something that they love, they hold it close to them, and that is essentially what this poem is saying he's going to do with his love. He's going to hold her close. He's not going to let her go. He's not going to leave her, and which is a really beautiful thing. So I think I definitely preferred the second definition for the way that it's used in this poem. So next I'm gonna do a comparison on the word choices regarding the words that I just went over. I was surprised with my findings in the word choices for these two poems. Going into this project, I thought that there would be obvious differences between the word choices, but there really wasn't. A big question that I was asking myself during this project was if the words used in these poems would be able to work if they swapped time periods. By this I'm meaning, would Shakespeare's word choices work in modern English, and would Cummings' words work in early modern English? I would say that the answer is yes. The meaning of these words, they have not had enough change within the time between eras to be deemed as unusable or confusing in any way. Where the big difference lies between these poems is the use of punctuation. I do not think that Cummings' writing styles would be as admired in early modern English era. Although there are arguments that I Carry Your Heart With Me, I Carry It In is a sonnet, the sporadic use of parentheses and the lack of capitalizations leave this poem feeling far less structured than the Shakespeare's poem. In early modern English, people were just beginning to value structure and paid more attention to grammar, while in modern English, there is an appreciation of a more unconventional form of writing in order to convey a certain emotion or meaning. So I was surprised that I didn't necessarily find huge differences in the word choices like I was expecting, but I was happy that I did see a big difference in something, which was the structure of the poems along with the punctuation and grammar. So next I'm going to talk about the word origin comparison. Because these are both poems from the Romantic genre, I kind of had it set in my head for some reason that these words would mainly originate from the French language. I'm thinking because, there's always like that saying that the language of love is French. However, I was surprised that was not necessarily the case for this project. 4 of the words originated from the Germanic language, 3 from the French language, 2 from Old English, and 1 from Latin. So there wasn't really one origin that overpowered another. They were pretty evenly spread out. By the end of this project, this makes sense to me because I did choose a variety of words that had very different sounds and meanings. I do think that if I had chosen words that had more similarities, I think my findings would have been very different. And I do think that there would have been a dominant origin among the words. And we are finally to the conclusion. So my conclusion for this project is, through analyzing these 2 poems, I discovered that word meanings have not changed in the Romantic genre of poetry from early modern English to modern English. I also found that there was not a dominant origin for the words used in these poems. Although the word meanings have not changed, I did find that the format and expectations of poems have changed between these 2 eras, with Shakespeare's sonnet far more structured than Cummings' poem that contains unconventional uses of punctuation. And here's my works cited page. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope maybe you learned something new today. I appreciate it. Thank you.